Resident Evil Village is a game that I absolutely adore. I've played every game from Resident Evil 1 through Village, although the remake versions of 1 through 3, and I definitely feel that Village is a top 3 game in the series. Maybe top 4 if you count RE4 Remake as a separate game, and in this video, I'm going to explain why. To talk about Village, we need to talk about 7. Both games represent the new era of Resident Evil games, yet they're entirely different games. Resident Evil 7 was a gritty, concise survival horror experience, and it did it very well. Village isn't that at all. It's a larger action horror gauntlet, which is something I much prefer. The game has constant variety in terms of enemies, villains, weapons and locations, and almost all of it works beautifully. The villains are mostly cool, but there is a very obvious imbalance in terms of quality. Lady Dimitrescu is far and away the best villain in this game, and none of the other villains manage to live up to her. It does feel as though the game blew its load a bit too early, as you run into the sexy vampire lady quite early into the game, and she only sticks around for about an hour or so. After that, it's on to the next. That's the general flow of the whole game, really. The castle was my favourite part of the game. It's probably where the game feels the most like the RPD, for example, before we move on to other locations that branch out a bit more from the standard Resident Evil formula. The puppet lady, the giant fish, and the mechanical man are cool, but they pale in comparison to Lady Dimitrescu. In fact, I've actually forgotten the names of them all, hence the nicknames. There is an issue with characterization in this game, I feel, as I think there's only 2 good characters in the whole game. Dimitrescu and Chris. I've been very vocal with my anti-Chris Redfield campaign in previous videos, but this is the only game where I feel he actually is utilised well and actually has an ounce of unique characterisation. I wish he was in the game more, but instead we have Ethan. Very boring guy.
Well, hi there, little Rose.
That's obviously intentional, that's kind of the point of him. It makes it scarier to be a regular guy facing these horrors, as opposed to a combat-trained super soldier. But still, I'm not a massive fan of him. The village itself, though, is incredible. It really does feel alive and full of death at every turn, just like all the locations you visit, which all have their own unique aesthetic and tone. The castle is one of eeriness. The puppet house is downright terrifying. Let's just talk about that for a second. Many people have called it one of the scariest areas they've played in a horror game in years, and I can see why. Just look at this shit, man. The area where you fight the giant fish is awesome and flows quite nicely. The caves are basically just action gauntlets, but they're fun. I love the tone and general aesthetic of the mechanical place, but I thought that the enemies were quite annoying, although they do create some very tense moments, and the mini-boss towards the end bothered me. The story is the exact same as the rest of the game, completely bonkers. The opening sequence is just downright insane, and then you're constantly just on this railroad of even more insanity until you finish the game. It does remind me of a faster paced Resident Evil 4, especially the remake version. What I found astounding though is how they jumped to this from Resident Evil 7. I touched upon it earlier, but I think this was a bold move. Capcom earned a lot of goodwill by taking the series back to its purely survival horror based roots, with the tight ammo economy, tight corridors, drab setting. Like, it was really a very contained experience, and it really did it extraordinarily well. Even the Bakers, for example, they were brilliant survival horror villains because something was clearly not right. You wanted to learn more. I feel like they had a bit more depth to them than a lot of the villains in Village do. And of course, the series has made the mistake before of taking it too far in the action direction. But I do feel like they've managed to find the right balance here, just like they did with 4. If you're someone who loved everything that Resident Evil 7 produced, it's your favourite game in the series, you think it's incredible, then you may not click with this as much, as it is a pretty different game. But I do think it is a better game. But of course it all depends on what you prefer more. Resident Evil 4 is my favourite game in the series, I know, shocking outlandish opinion that nobody else holds. So I'm obviously going to, take a likening towards Village, more so than maybe some survival horror veterans possibly would. I have a lot of love for Resident Evil 7, go check out my video on it if you want to, but Village is much more up my alley. It's more carnage, it's more action, it's more weapons, it's more enemies, it's overall just more. And I will always want to play more of this brilliance. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, then please consider leaving a like, as that would really help me out, and you could always consider subscribing if you want to see more videos like this one, because I upload them weekly. But that's all from me. Have a nice day, and goodbye.